In the year 2147, humanity stood on the brink of a new era. For decades, Earth had been sending signals into the cosmos, hoping to make contact with intelligent life beyond its borders. Finally, the answer came, not as a distant echo, but as a fleet of shimmering silver ships descending from the stars. Among them was an emissary who would change everything. Princess Lysara, a representative of the Vailith, an advanced alien species whose technology and culture were unlike anything humans had ever seen. The world watched in awe as her ship touched down at the United Nations headquarters in New York City. Cameras flashed, reporters shouted questions, and dignitaries lined up to greet her. But no one felt the weight of the moment more than Ethan Cross, a junior diplomat assigned to assist during her stay. Ethan wasn't anyone important, just a hard-working man in his early 30s trying to prove himself in a field dominated by older, more experienced professionals. Yet fate seemed determined to place him at the center of something extraordinary. When Lysara emerged from her vessel, the crowd fell silent. She was tall and graceful, her skin shimmering faintly like moonlight on water. Her eyes glowed softly, shifting colors with every blink, and her voice carried a melodic quality that made even simple words sound poetic. To Ethan, she was otherworldly, not just because of her appearance, but because of the aura of mystery that surrounded her. He couldn't look away. As part of his duties, Ethan escorted Lysara to her quarters within the diplomatic wing of the UN building. Along the way, he found himself struggling to maintain his composure. "Is there anything you need?" he asked nervously, fumbling with the tablet containing her schedule. Lysara tilted her head slightly, studying him with those luminous eyes. "Your assistance is appreciated," she replied, her tone calm yet curious. "But tell me, Ethan Cross, do all humans carry such hesitation when speaking to strangers?" Ethan flushed, caught off guard by her perceptiveness. I didn't mean to seem nervous," he stammered. "It's just, you're not exactly what I expected." Her lips curved into what might have been a smile. "Nor are you," she said simply, leaving him unsure whether it was a compliment or an observation. Over the next few days, Ethan accompanied Lysara to various meetings and events. Each interaction left him more intrigued and more confused. There was something about her demeanor, a quiet sadness lurking beneath her regal exterior, that tugged at his heart. She rarely spoke unless necessary, and when she did, her words carried layers of meaning he couldn't fully grasp. It was as if she were observing humanity from a great distance, trying to understand but never quite connecting. One evening, after a long day of negotiations, Ethan found himself walking alongside her through the gardens outside the UN complex. The air was cool, and the city lights twinkled like scattered stars above them. For a moment, they walked in silence, the only sound the soft crunch of gravel beneath their feet. "Why do you stay so close to me?" Lysara asked suddenly, breaking the quiet. Her question startled him, but he answered honestly. "Because someone has to," he said. "And because I want to help." She turned to face him, her glowing eyes searching his face. "Help me, or learn from me?" Ethan hesitated, unsure how to respond. Before he could speak, she continued, her voice softer now. "You are different from the others, Ethan Cross. I see curiosity in you, not fear. That is rare among your kind." Her words lingered in his mind long after they parted ways that night. Different, was she right? And why did her opinion matter so much to him? As he lay in bed later, staring at the ceiling, Ethan realized he was beginning to feel something he hadn't anticipated. A deep admiration for this alien princess who seemed as out of place in her world as he sometimes felt in his own. Little did he know, their connection was only beginning, and it would lead them both down paths neither could have imagined. Over the next few weeks, Ethan and Lysara spent more time together than either of them had anticipated. At first, their interactions were strictly professional, Ethan guiding her through Earth's customs, explaining human traditions, and ensuring she felt comfortable in an unfamiliar environment. But as days turned into weeks, a quiet bond began to form between them. It wasn't spoken aloud or even acknowledged. It simply existed, like a thread weaving them closer with each passing moment. One afternoon, Ethan took Lysera to a small art gallery tucked away in the heart of Manhattan. He had heard about it from a colleague and thought it might interest her. The gallery was filled with vibrant paintings, sculptures, and digital installations that showcased humanity's creativity across centuries. As they walked through the space, Ethan watched Lysera closely, noting how her glowing eyes widened at certain pieces. "This one," she said softly, stopping in front of a painting of a stormy sea under a blood-red sky. "It stirs something within me." Ethan glanced at the artwork, surprised by her choice. "It's called The Fury of Nature. Most people find it unsettling." "Unsettling." She tilted her head, studying the swirling colors. "No, it feels alive, like chaos given form." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "I think I understand it." For the first time, Ethan saw a flicker of emotion break through Lysera's usually composed exterior. There was sadness in her gaze, but also wonder, a glimpse of the person beneath the regal mask. He wanted to ask what she meant, to delve deeper into her thoughts, but he held back, afraid of overstepping. Later that evening, Lysera invited Ethan to her quarters for what she called a cultural exchange. When he arrived, she greeted him with a holographic display hovering above a sleek black table. The images shifted and shimmered, depicting scenes from Veil of history. Ancient battles fought among stars, cities built on floating platforms, and moments of peace shattered by betrayal. "These are our stories," Lysera explained, her tone tinged with both pride and sorrow. "We have endured much to reach this point, but we are not so different from you." Ethan leaned forward, captivated. "You mean pain and loss?" She nodded. "Yes, and hope. Without hope, no species can survive." As they talked, Ethan noticed subtle changes in Lysera's demeanor. She seemed less guarded, more willing to share parts of herself she kept hidden from others. For his part, Ethan found himself opening up too, telling her about his childhood dreams of becoming an astronaut and how those aspirations had slowly faded into the monotony of diplomatic work. "I never imagined I'd meet someone like you," he admitted, his voice barely above a murmur. Lysera looked at him, her luminous eyes softening. "And I never imagined I would meet someone who sees beyond my title." Their connection deepened further when Lysera introduced Ethan to Veilith music, an ethereal blend of harmonies and resonant tones that seemed to vibrate in his very bones. As the melodies filled the room, Ethan closed his eyes, letting the sound wash over him. When he opened them again, he caught Lysera watching him intently. "What do you feel?" she asked. "Peace," he replied without hesitation. "Like nothing else matters." A faint smile touched her lips, and for a brief moment, the barriers between them dissolved completely. They weren't just a human and an alien. They were two beings sharing something profound, something neither fully understood but both cherished. But reality soon intruded. As Ethan prepared to leave, Lysera's expression grew serious. "Be careful, Ethan Cross," she warned. "Not everyone will approve of our friendship." Her words lingered in his mind as he walked back to his apartment. He knew she was right. Their growing closeness could raise suspicions, especially in a world still wary of aliens. Yet, despite the risks, Ethan couldn't bring himself to pull away. Something about Lysera drew him in, making him want to know her better, even if it meant stepping into uncharted territory. Unbeknownst to him, Lysera stood by her window, gazing out at the city lights. Her thoughts mirrored his own. Curiosity mixed with caution, admiration laced with uncertainty. Whatever lay ahead, one thing was clear: their bond was stronger than either of them realized. And it was only a matter of time before the world noticed. As Ethan and Lysera's connection deepened, tensions in the world around them began to rise. The initial excitement over the Veilith's arrival had given way to unease. Rumors spread like wildfire. whispers of secret agendas, hidden motives, and fears that humanity was being manipulated by their alien visitors. Among these rumors was a darker thread. Talk of rogue factions within Earth's governments plotting to sabotage peace talks with the Vailith. Ethan first noticed something amiss during a routine briefing. He sat at the back of the conference room as senior diplomats discussed logistics for an upcoming summit between human leaders and the Vailith delegation. Most of the conversation revolved around security protocols and seating arrangements, but one name caught his attention: Senator Halvard, a vocal critic of alien diplomacy. Halvard had been pushing for stricter measures against the Vailith, often citing national security as his justification. When the meeting ended, Ethan lingered behind, pretending to organize his notes while eavesdropping on a heated discussion between two high-ranking officials. One of them mentioned classified documents detailing a potential threat to the summit. Though they spoke in hushed tones, Ethan caught enough to understand that someone, possibly human, was planning to disrupt the event. His stomach churned as he left the room. Could it be true? Was there really a plot to harm Lysara or derail the fragile peace process? And if so, what role did people like Senator Halvard play in it? Determined to uncover the truth, Ethan accessed restricted files late that night using credentials borrowed from a careless colleague. What he found chilled him to the bone. Hidden among mundane reports were memos outlining contingency plans for dealing with the Vailith, including scenarios involving violence. Worse still, there were references to a shadowy group operating outside official channels, allegedly funded by powerful figures opposed to interspecies cooperation. Ethan knew he couldn't ignore this information, but who could he trust? If he went to his superiors, they might dismiss him as paranoid, or worse, silence him altogether. His thoughts turned to Lysara. She deserved to know about the danger lurking in the shadows, yet revealing such sensitive details would put her in an impossible position, forcing her to choose between protecting herself and maintaining diplomatic neutrality. The next day, Ethan struggled to focus on his duties. Every glance at Lysara filled him with guilt and fear. How could he warn her without jeopardizing everything? During a quiet moment in the garden, he finally worked up the courage to speak. "Lysara," he began hesitantly, "there's something I need to tell you." She turned to face him, her glowing eyes narrowing slightly. "You seem troubled, Ethan Cross. What is it?" Taking a deep breath, he recounted what he'd discovered, careful not to reveal too much. "There are factions among humans who don't want peace with your people. Some may even try to harm you." Lysara listened silently, her expression unreadable. When he finished, she placed a hand on his arm, a gesture that sent a jolt through him. "Thank you for telling me," she said softly. "But you must be cautious. Trusting the wrong person could endanger us both." Her words weighed heavily on Ethan as he walked away. He realized now just how precarious their situation was. Lysara wasn't just a diplomat. She was a symbol of hope for interspecies unity, and a target for those who feared change. By warning her, he had crossed a line, stepping out of the safety of his ordinary life and into a world of intrigue and danger. That evening, as Ethan lay in bed staring at the ceiling, his mind raced with possibilities. Who exactly was behind the conspiracy? What lengths would they go to stop the summit? And most importantly, how far was he willing to go to protect Lysara? Little did he know, Lysara was grappling with her own secrets. Back in her quarters, she activated a private communication device, transmitting a coded message to her advisors aboard the Vailith flagship. Her mission on Earth wasn't merely diplomatic, it was investigative, and Ethan's revelation had just given her the lead she needed to expose humanity's darkest intentions. For better or worse, their fates were now intertwined. The weight of Ethan's discovery hung over him like a storm cloud, casting shadows on every interaction he had with Lysara. He couldn't shake the feeling that time was running out, that the fragile peace they were trying to build might shatter at any moment. Yet despite the danger, their bond continued to grow stronger. Every stolen glance, every quiet conversation felt like a rebellion against the forces threatening to tear them apart. One evening, after a long day of tense negotiations, Ethan found himself alone with Lysara in the rooftop garden of the UN complex. The city skyline stretched out before them, its lights twinkling like stars reflected in the night sky. For a while, neither spoke. The silence between them was comfortable, almost sacred. But Ethan knew this moment couldn't last. Sooner or later, he would have to confront the truth, not just about the conspiracy, but also about his feelings for her. Lysara, he began hesitantly, breaking the stillness. There's something I need to say. She turned to face him, her luminous eyes locking onto his. There was no judgment in her gaze, only curiosity. Go on. Ethan took a deep breath, his heart pounding in his chest. I don't know how you'll take this, but I can't keep pretending I don't care about you, not when everything feels so uncertain. Her expression softened, though she remained silent, waiting for him to continue. I've tried to stay professional, to keep my distance, he admitted, but it's impossible. You're not just an emissary from another world. You're someone who makes me want to believe in things I thought were impossible. And now, knowing there's a threat against you, his voice cracked slightly, I can't stand by and do nothing. Lysara studied him for a long moment, her glowing eyes searching his face, as if trying to decipher the depths of his soul. Then, slowly, she reached out and placed her hand over his. Her touch was cool but strangely comforting, sending a wave of calm through him. You are brave, Ethan Cross, she said softly. Braver than most humans, and braver than many of my own kind. To care so deeply, even when it is dangerous, that is rare. Her words gave him courage. Does that mean you feel the same way? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Instead of answering directly, Lysara stepped closer, closing the gap between them. You must understand, Ethan. My mission here is more than diplomacy. I came to learn whether humanity is ready to coexist with us, or if your fears will always outweigh your hopes. Ethan nodded, understanding dawning in his mind. And now, what do you think? For the first time, Lysara allowed herself to smile fully, her radiant features lighting up the night. I think you give me reason to hope. Before either could say more, the sound of footsteps echoed nearby. They quickly pulled apart, turning to see a security officer approaching. Everything all right, sir? The man asked, eyeing them suspiciously. Yes, fine, Ethan replied, forcing a casual tone. As the officer walked away, he exchanged a glance with Lysara. Both knew their time together was limited, and their enemies were watching. Later that night, Lysara sent Ethan a secure message containing details of a plan she devised to expose the conspirators. Together, they would gather evidence during the summit and present it publicly, ensuring the truth came to light. It was risky, but neither could imagine another path forward. As Ethan read her message, he realized something profound. Their connection wasn't just personal, it was political. By standing together, they weren't just fighting for each other. They were fighting for a future where love transcended boundaries. But even as hope loomed within him, Ethan couldn't ignore the nagging question in the back of his mind. What secrets is Lysara still keeping? Lysara's decision to stay on Earth, despite her advisor's demands, ignited a firestorm of controversy. News of her defiance spread quickly, fueling debates across both human and Violet societies. To some, her choice was an act of rebellion, a bold statement that love and unity could transcend boundaries. To others, it was a betrayal of duty, proof that she had become too entangled with humanity to serve as a fair mediator. For Ethan and Lysara, the backlash was overwhelming. They were thrust into the spotlight, their every move scrutinized by critics eager to exploit any misstep. Protesters gathered outside the UN complex, holding signs with slogans like, "Stay out of our world," and "Aliens don't belong here." Meanwhile, Violet broadcasts condemned Lysara for abandoning her responsibilities, accusing her of jeopardizing centuries of diplomatic progress. Yet, amid the hostility, there were also voices of support. Ordinary citizens from both species began speaking out, sharing stories of how Ethan and Lysara's courage inspired them to see beyond prejudice. Social media campaigns emerge, using hashtags like #TogetherWeRise and #LoveKnowsNoSpecies to rally people around their cause. Slowly but surely, a coalition of allies formed, determined to protect the fragile bond between human and alien. Determined to fight back against the growing tide of opposition, Ethan and Lysara embarked on a risky journey to unite sympathetic members of both races under one banner. Their mission took them far beyond the confines of New York City, traveling to remote villages, bustling metropolises, and even orbital stations where humans and Vailith coexisted uneasily. Everywhere they went, they shared their story, not just of romance but of hope, resilience, and the belief that differences could be strengths rather than barriers. One memorable stop was a small town in Canada, home to a community of retired astronauts who had once dreamed of meeting extraterrestrial life. When Ethan and Lysara arrived, they were greeted with cautious curiosity. But as Lysara spoke about her struggles, her dual heritage, her fears of rejection, the crowd softened. One elderly man stepped forward, tears in his eyes. "You remind me of why we reached for the stars," he said, his voice trembling. "Not to conquer or divide, but to connect." That moment became a turning point. Word of their tour spread, drawing larger crowds and sparking conversations that challenged long-held prejudices. Even skeptics found themselves moved by the sincerity of Ethan and Lysara's partnership. It wasn't perfect. There were still jeers, threats, and moments when fear threatened to overshadow hope. But progress was undeniable. Back at the UN headquarters, pressure mounted for a resolution. Leaders from both sides convened for an emergency council meeting, debating whether to sever ties or continue pursuing peace. The atmosphere was tense, with tempers flaring and accusations flying. Just when it seemed negotiations might collapse entirely, Ethan stood up, his voice cutting through the chaos. "We're not so different, you and I," he said, addressing both human and Vailith delegates. "We all want safety, understanding, and a future worth fighting for. What Lysara and I have isn't just love. It's proof that we can overcome our differences if we try." His words struck a chord, silencing the room. Then, unexpectedly, a Vailith elder rose to speak. "Perhaps," he intoned, his melodic voice resonating, "this human is right. Perhaps we spent too long fearing what we don't understand." The tide began to shift. For the first time, compromise seemed possible. Yet, even as optimism grew, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that their greatest challenge was yet to come. He glanced at Lysara, who gave him a reassuring smile. Together, they had faced danger, betrayal, and doubt. Whatever lay ahead, they would face it side by side. But fate had one more surprise in store, a revelation that would change everything. The days following the summit were a whirlwind of investigations, accusations, and media frenzy. Senator Halvard's arrest had sent shockwaves through both human and Vailith communities, exposing the cracks in humanity's fragile alliance with their alien counterparts. While some hailed Ethan and Lysara as heroes for preventing disaster, others viewed them with suspicion, especially those who believed humans shouldn't trust outsiders. Amid the chaos, Ethan found himself struggling to process everything that had happened. He and Lysara had survived an assassination attempt, thwarted a conspiracy, and deepened their bond in ways he never thought possible. Yet, even as they stood united, unanswered questions lingered between them. Who exactly was Lysara? And what secrets was she still keeping? One evening, after another grueling day of debriefings, Lysara invited Ethan to her private quarters. The room was dimly lit, with soft ambient light casting a serene glow over the sleek furnishings. She gestured for him to sit, her expression unusually solemn. "There is something I must tell you," she began, her voice steady but tinged with emotion. "Something I should have told you long ago." Ethan's heart skipped a beat. "Lysara, what is it?" She hesitated, as if searching for the right words. Then, with a deep breath, she revealed the truth. "I am not entirely Vailith," she admitted. My mother was human. The revelation hit Ethan like a thunderclap. He stared at her, his mind racing to comprehend what she just said. Human. But how? Lysara explained, her tone measured yet filled with quiet pain. Centuries ago, during humanity's early attempts at space exploration, a human explorer had formed a forbidden relationship with a Valeth noble. Their union resulted in Lysara's birth, a living bridge between two species meant to symbolize hope. However, such unions were considered taboo by both societies, forcing her parents into hiding. When they died under mysterious circumstances, Lysara was raised by the Valeth court, burdened by the weight of her dual heritage. I was sent here not only to negotiate peace, but also to test humanity's readiness for coexistence, she continued. But meeting you, it has changed me. You've shown me that love can transcend fear, and that perhaps my existence isn't a curse but a gift. Ethan listened in stunned silence, his emotions swirling. On one hand, he felt betrayed that she hadn't trusted him sooner. On the other, he understood why she kept this secret. It wasn't just about protecting herself, it was about protecting him. So all this time, he murmured, piecing things together, you've been carrying this alone. Yes, she replied softly. Until now. Her vulnerability broke through his initial hesitation. Reaching out, he took her hand in his. You don't have to carry it alone anymore, he said firmly. Whatever comes next, we'll face it together. Tears shimmered in Lysara's luminous eyes, though they didn't fall. For the first time, Ethan saw her not as a princess or an emissary, but as a person, flawed and beautiful, just like him. But their moment of connection was short-lived. A sudden alert interrupted them, a message from the Valeth flagship. Lysara's advisors demanded her immediate return, citing urgent matters regarding Earth-Valeth relations. As she read the transmission, her jaw tightened. What does it say? Ethan asked, sensing her unease. They want me to leave, she said grimly. They believe my presence here jeopardizes diplomatic stability. Ethan's stomach sank. And you? What do you believe? Lysara met his gaze, her resolve hardening. I believe in us, she declared, in what we've built. If I leave now, everything we've fought for will be lost. For the first time, Ethan realized the true stakes of their relationship. It wasn't just about love. It was about proving that unity was possible, even in the face of fear and prejudice. Together, they would defy expectations and forge a new path forward, no matter the cost. The day of the summit arrived, and the atmosphere was electric with anticipation and tension. World leaders from every corner of Earth gathered alongside Valeth dignitaries in a grand hall, adorned with flags, banners, and intricate alien designs that shimmered like liquid light. Security was tight, with armed guards stationed at every entrance and advanced scanners sweeping the room for threats. Despite the precautions, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that something sinister lurked beneath the surface. Lysara stood tall at the center of the stage, her regal presence commanding attention. Her glowing eyes scanned the crowd, betraying none of the anxiety she must have felt. Ethan watched her from the sidelines, his heart pounding as he clutched a small data chip in his pocket, the evidence they had gathered about the conspiracy. If their plan worked, this would be the moment when truth triumphed over fear. But if it failed, the consequences could be catastrophic. As the proceedings began, speeches droned on about unity, cooperation, and shared futures. Ethan barely heard them. His focus was entirely on Lysara. She caught his gaze briefly, her expression calm but resolute. They had agreed on a signal, a subtle nod, that would indicate when to act. Until then, all they could do was wait. Midway through the event, chaos erupted. A deafening alarm blared through the hall, followed by shouts of panic. Bomb threat. Evacuate immediately. Someone yelled over the intercom. People surged toward the exits, pushing and shoving in their desperation to escape. Ethan's stomach dropped. This wasn't part of the plan. It was an ambush. Amid the confusion, Ethan spotted Senator Halvard slipping away from the main group, his face pale but determined. Something about his demeanor set off alarms in Ethan's mind. Ignoring the stampede around him, Ethan pushed against the flow of people and followed Halvard into a secluded corridor. "Halvard," Ethan called out, his voice sharp with accusation. The senator froze, turning slowly to face him. In his hand was a small device, clearly the trigger for whatever disaster was unfolding. "You shouldn't have come here, Cross," Halvard growled, clutching the device tighter. "This is bigger than you can understand." "It's betrayal," Ethan shot back, stepping closer. "You're willing to destroy everything. For what? Power? Fear?" Before Halvard could respond, a blur of motion swept past Ethan. It was Lysara, moving faster than he'd ever seen. With a swift, graceful motion, she disarmed the senator, sending the device clattering to the floor. Halvard stumbled backward, his face twisted in shock and rage. "How dare you interfere?" he spat, glaring at Lysara. "You don't belong here. And yet I stand where you fall," Lysara replied coolly, her voice carrying an edge of authority. "Your hatred reveals your weakness." Ethan quickly retrieved the device, deactivating it just as security forces arrived to detain Halvard. The immediate threat was neutralized, but the danger wasn't over yet. As they escorted the senator away, another figure emerged from the shadows, an assassin, wielding a sleek weapon aimed directly at Lysara. Without hesitation, Ethan lunged forward, shoving Lysara out of harm's way. The shot missed her, striking the nearby wall instead. Before the attacker could fire again, Lysara retaliated with astonishing speed, using her own advanced technology to disable the weapon. Within moments, reinforcements arrived, subduing the assassin. Breathing heavily, Ethan turned to Lysara, who looked at him with a mixture of gratitude and concern. "You saved my life," she said softly. "And you saved mine," he replied, managing a weak smile despite the adrenaline coursing through him. Though the crisis had been averted, the aftermath left both of them shaken. The summit resumed under heavy guard, but the mood had shifted. Trust between humans and Vailith hung by a thread, and Ethan knew their work was far from done. As they returned to their seats, Lysara leaned close to whisper, "We've exposed one enemy today, but others remain hidden. Are you ready to face them?" Ethan nodded firmly. Whatever came next, he would stand by her side, not just because it was right, but because he couldn't imagine doing anything else. Together, they were stronger, and together, they would fight for a future worth believing in. The final day of the emergency council meeting arrived, and the world held its breath. Representatives from both humanity and the Vailith gathered in a grand assembly hall, their expressions ranging from hopeful to hostile. Ethan and Lysara stood together at the center of the stage, their presence symbolizing the fragile bridge between two species. The air was thick with anticipation as they prepared to make their case for unity. As Ethan addressed the council, his voice steady but impassioned, he recounted their journey, the challenges they had faced, the dangers they had overcome, and the bonds they had forged. "Fear has driven us apart for too long," he declared. "But fear doesn't have to define us. We can choose to see each other not as enemies, but as equals." When it was Lysara's turn to speak, she stepped forward, her glowing eyes scanning the room. Her words carried a weight that silenced even the most vocal critics. "I came here as an emissary, tasked with testing your readiness for coexistence. What I found instead was something far greater, a glimpse of what we could become if we dared to trust one another." Her speech resonated deeply, but just as hope began to take root, Lysara revealed one last secret. Placing a hand on her abdomen, she spoke softly yet firmly. "There is more to my story, and to our future. I carry within me a child born of both human and Vailith blood." Gasps rippled through the room. Even Ethan froze, stunned by the revelation. For weeks, Lysara had suspected, but hadn't been certain until now. She turned to him, her expression filled with both vulnerability and determination. "This child will be a living testament to what we fought for, a symbol of unity, not division." The council erupted into chaos. Some delegates shouted in outrage, calling the pregnancy unnatural and dangerous. Others sat in stunned silence, grappling with the implications. But amidst the turmoil, a small group of supporters rose to their feet, applauding Lysara's courage. Among them was the Violet elder who had spoken earlier, his voice cutting through the noise. "This child changes everything," he said solemnly. "It is neither fully human or fully Violet. It is something new, something better. Shall we deny it a place in our worlds? Or shall we embrace it as a sign of hope?" His words struck a chord. Slowly, hesitantly, others began to join him. First a few, then dozens, until the entire chamber echoed with applause. It wasn't unanimous, but it was enough. A resolution was passed, pledging continued cooperation and laying the groundwork for a shared future. In the days that followed, Ethan and Lysara became symbols of change. Their love story captured the imagination of millions, inspiring acts of kindness and understanding across both species. Though challenges remained, prejudices ran deep, and some factions refused to accept the new reality. Their bond proved that progress was possible. For Ethan, life took on a profound new meaning. As he watched Lysara cradle her growing belly, he felt a sense of purpose he'd never known before. Together, they would raise their child in a world still learning to heal, but also one beginning to dream again. And so, under the watchful eyes of stars and civilizations alike, a new chapter began, not just for Ethan and Lysara, but for all who dared to believe in a brighter tomorrow. Their legacy would endure, reminding future generations that even the smallest spark of love could ignite a galaxy of possibilities.